I'm Simone, 34, female. I live in a city apartment that I designed to be my sanctuary, a quiet space filled with clean lines, functional art, and the prototypes of my work as an industrial designer. For years, my life was a carefully constructed balance of a demanding career and a complicated relationship with my family. My younger sister, Jessica, was always the star of our family's solar system, and I was the distant, practical planet orbiting her. The story I'm about to tell is about how I finally broke that orbit after being told my presence wasn't welcome at the most important event of her life. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, nestled between a utility bill and a design magazine. It was thick, creamy cardstock with elegant gold calligraphy that screamed Jessica. Her name, intertwined with her fiancé's, Alexander, was the centerpiece. I traced the embossed letters with my thumb, a hollow feeling already beginning to form in my stomach. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a summons, a reminder of my designated role in the family hierarchy. I was the reliable one, the practical one. While Jessica was collecting followers as a lifestyle blogger, curating a life that looked perfect from every angle, I was collecting patents. I designed ergonomic tools, sustainable packaging, and furniture that solved problems. My world was one of blueprints, prototypes, and deadlines. Her world was one of sponsored posts, flattering filters, and carefully staged, candid moments. Our parents, Mark and Helen, saw her as their success story. Her life was public, shiny, and easily understood. Mine was quiet, complex, and in their eyes, less impressive. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Did you get it? The invitation. Isn't it just divine?" I typed back a simple, "Yes, it's lovely. We're having dinner on Sunday to discuss the wedding plans." She replied instantly, "Your father and I need your help with a few things. Don't be late." I sighed, placing the invitation on my kitchen counter. It felt less like a request and more like a set of instructions. For as long as I could remember, my role had been to be the behind, the scene stage manager for Jessica's life. I helped her with her college applications while she went to parties. I co-signed for her first apartment while she was finding herself. On a trip through Europe, funded by our parents, I even designed the logo for her blog, a favor for which I never received credit. I was the sturdy, invisible scaffolding that held up her glittering facade. The week leading up to the dinner was filled with a familiar sense of dread. I loved my sister, or at least I loved the idea of her, the girl she was before the internet turned her into a brand. But the dynamic between us, fueled by our parents' blatant favoritism, had become a source of quiet, constant pain. At 34, I was a respected professional in my field. I had spoken at conferences, my designs were in production, and I was financially independent. Yet, in my family's eyes, I was still just Jessica's older sister, the one who was a little too serious, a little too plain, and perpetually single. On Sunday, I walked into my parents' house, the same house I grew up in, and was immediately hit by the scent of roast chicken and my mother's perfume. Jessica and Alexander were already there, sitting on the couch, looking like a magazine ad. He was handsome, wealthy, and radiated an easy charm. My father was laughing at something he said, his approval so thick you could cut it with a knife. "Simone, there you are," my mother said, kissing the air beside my cheek. Come, we have so much to talk about. Dinner was a masterclass in Jessica worship. We heard about her dress fitting, the celebrity florist she had booked, and the exclusive venue that had a year-long waiting list, which, of course, was waived for her. Alexander's family was old money, and this wedding was set to be the social event of the season. My father beamed with pride, already composing the speech he would give about his two wonderful daughters, though I knew I would only be a footnote. I ate my chicken, offered polite murmurs of encouragement, and felt myself slowly disappearing. My own recent achievement, winning a National Design Award, was dismissed with a quick, "Oh, that's nice, dear," before the conversation immediately veered back to the topic of wedding favors. After the plates were cleared, my mother clapped her hands together. "All right, Simone, we need to talk about your role." I braced myself, maid of honor, bridesmaid. I had assumed one of these, though Jessica had yet to ask me. My father cleared his throat, looking unusually stern. "Simone, you know this wedding is very important. For Jessica, for Alexander, for their families. It's a merger of two very influential families." "I understand," I said slowly. It's a big deal, exactly. My mother chimed in, her smile a little too tight, and we want it to be perfect, absolutely perfect, no distractions. I looked at Jessica. She was staring at her perfectly manicured nails, a silent participant in a conversation that was clearly about me. A cold knot of fear tightened in my chest. This wasn't about choosing a dress color. This was something else entirely. The air in the living room grew thick with unspoken words. My father, a man who usually dealt in straightforward financial advice, suddenly seemed to be searching for the right way to phrase a hostile takeover. My mother fussed with a cushion, avoiding my gaze. Only Jessica remained serene, a Mona Lisa in pastels, while her fiancé, Alexander, studied a painting on the wall with feigned interest. What kind of distractions are we talking about? I asked, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil churning inside me. My father took a deep breath. Look, Simone, you're different. You've always been different. You're intensely private. You don't care for these kinds of social events, and your lifestyle, it's not exactly traditional. My lifestyle. I worked 60 hours a week, paid my mortgage, and my idea of a wild night was binge, watching a documentary on sustainable architecture. What he meant was that I was unmarried. I didn't have a wealthy partner to parade around. My life wasn't a performance for public consumption. Jessica's brand is about a certain image. My mother cut in, her voice softening into a tone of patronizing sympathy. It's about family, tradition, and fairy tale romance. Alexander's family is very conservative. We just want to present a united, happy front. The implication hung in the air, ugly and sharp. My presence, in its simple, unadorned state, was a threat to this united, happy front. I wasn't shiny enough. I didn't fit the brand. So what are you asking me to do? I said, looking directly at Jessica. Wear a different dress, get a makeover. Jessica finally looked up, her expression a careful blend of apology and resolve. It's not just about that, Simone. Well, people will ask questions. What questions? They'll ask why my older sister, who is so successful in her career, isn't married, she said, as if this was a fatal flaw. They'll see you standing there alone, and they'll pity you. It will look sad. It will reflect poorly on us. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just that I was single. It was that my singlehood was a source of shame for them. It was a blemish on her perfect day, we thought. My father said, jumping back in, that perhaps you could bring a date, a presentable date. You want me to rent a date for my own sister's wedding? I asked, disbelief sharpening my tone. Don't be so dramatic, my mother snapped. We just want you to make an effort, or alternatively. She trailed off, glancing at my father. He was the one who delivered the final blow. He leaned forward, his voice low and firm, the voice he used when closing a deal. Alternatively, we think it might be better if you weren't there at all. A silence. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked loudly, marking the seconds of my humiliation. I looked from my father's determined face to my mother's anxious one, and finally to my sister, who was now examining a loose thread on her cashmere sweater. Not one of them could meet my eyes. They were telling me that my very existence, as it was an embarrassment. They weren't asking me to change, they were asking me to disappear. The years of feeling like an outsider, of my achievements being minimized, of my life being judged against Jessica's, all coalesced into a single, devastating moment of clarity. They didn't see me, they saw a problem to be managed. Let me see if I have this straight, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You want me to either find a fake boyfriend to pretend with for a day, or I'm uninvited from my own sister's wedding. It's not like that, honey. My mother began, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. It's exactly like that. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. My heart was pounding, a painful drumbeat in my ears. I looked at Jessica, the sister I had protected, supported, and quietly cheered for, even when she never did the same for me. It's your wedding, Jessica. I said, my voice hollow. You should have what you want. She gave me a small, relieved smile. Thank you for understanding, Simone. She didn't understand. She thought I was conceding. She thought I was agreeing to their terms, that I would either produce a suitable accessory on my arm or quietly bow out. She had no idea that in that moment I wasn't just deciding about her wedding. I was deciding about my entire future with them. You're right. I said, picking up my purse, on your wedding day, it's better I not be there. I walked out of the house, leaving the scent of roast chicken and betrayal behind me. The cool night air felt like a slap, waking me from a long, painful dream. They hadn't just uninvited me from a wedding. They had released me. The drive home was a blur. The city lights smeared across my windshield like watercolors in the rain, though the sky was clear. I was operating on autopilot, my mind replaying the scene in my parents' living room on a continuous, brutal loop. Every word, every glance, every carefully chosen, dismissive phrase was seared into my memory. It will look sad. It will reflect poorly on us. When I got back to my apartment, my sanctuary, it felt different. The clean lines and minimalist decor suddenly felt cold and empty. For years, I had told myself that my family's behavior was just how they were, my mother's anxieties, my father's focus on appearances, Jessica's self-absorption. I had normalized it all. I had built a life for myself separate from them, a life where my worth was measured by my talent and hard work, not by my relationship status or social media following. But I'd always held onto the hope that one day they would see me. Truly see me. That hope died in their living room. I sat on my sofa in the dark, the thick, creamy invitation still sitting on my counter, mocking me. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made, all the times I had put their needs before my own. The family vacations I helped pay for when my father's investments took a downturn. The late nights I spent helping Jessica with her business plan when her blog started to gain traction. The emotional support I provided my mother during her health scares. I was the family's bedrock, the emergency contact, the one they called when things got real. But I was not fit for public display. The next morning, I called the only person in my family who had ever made me feel seen, my Aunt Diana. She was my mother's younger sister, a university professor with a sharp mind and a low tolerance for nonsense. She had always been my advocate, the one who praised my intelligence and encouraged my ambitions. "Simone, darling, what's wrong?" she answered, her voice immediately laced with concern. I rarely called her on a weekday morning. I tried to explain, but my voice broke. The carefully constructed dam of composure I had maintained for the past 12 hours crumbled, and I sobbed the ugly, gasping kind of sobs that come from a deep, hidden place. Diana listened patiently, letting me pour out the entire humiliating story. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her processing, her academic brain analyzing the data points of my family's cruelty. "They are fools, Simone," she said finally, her voice firm and laced with an anger that was more comforting than any expression of sympathy. "They are insecure, superficial fools who are so blinded by glitter that they can't see the diamond standing right in front of them." "They don't want me there, Diana," I whispered. "They think I'm an embarrassment." "No," she corrected me. "They are embarrassed by their own shallow values, and they are projecting that onto you. You are a reflection of something real and substantive, and that scares them because they are living in a house of cards. Your life, your success on your own terms, it holds up a mirror to their own choices. And they don't like what they see." Her words were a balm on a raw wound. She was right. This wasn't about me. It was about them. It was about an image so fragile that the presence of an unmarried, independent woman could shatter it. "What do?" I asked. "Well, for starters, you will not be attending that circus," she said. "But we need to think about this strategically. You can't just vanish without a word. They will twist the narrative. They will make you the villain, the jealous, bitter sister who couldn't handle her siblings' happiness. We can't let them do that." We talked for over an hour, and with each passing minute, my sadness began to morph into something else, something colder and harder. It was resolve. They had given me an ultimatum: conform or disappear. They had expected me to choose the latter quietly, to fade into the background with my head bowed in shame. They had underestimated me. I had spent my life designing things. I was a problem solver. My family had just presented me with a new problem: how to disappear on my own terms in a way that would make them understand exactly what they had lost. The pain was still there, a deep, aching bruise on my heart. But now it was accompanied by a quiet, simmering anger. My mother texted me later that day, "Hope you're not too upset, sweetie. We just want what's best for everyone." I stared at the message, a perfect example of her talent for gaslighting. What's best for everyone? A sanitized phrase for what makes us look good. I didn't reply. The following week, Jessica called. "So, have you thought about what you're going to do?" she asked, no hint of apology in her voice. "The RSVP deadline is next Friday. I'm thinking about it." I said, my voice neutral. "Well, don't take too long," she said with a light laugh. "I need a final head count for the caterer, and if you do decide to come, please, for the love of God, don't wear one of your severe architectural outfits. It's a wedding, not a design conference." That was the moment the last vestiges of my familial duty withered and died. The anger that had been simmering began to burn. They wanted me to disappear, fine. I would give them exactly what they wanted. I would erase myself from their lives so completely that my absence would be a gaping hole they could never fill. My disappearance wouldn't be a quiet retreat, it would be a statement. My plan began to take shape not as a single, dramatic act of revenge, but as a series of quiet, deliberate, and irreversible steps. I was an industrial designer. My strength was in structure, process, and execution. I would dismantle my life in their world with the same precision I used to design a product. The first step was financial. My father had been my financial advisor for years, a setup that always made me vaguely uncomfortable, but one I'd agreed to out of a sense of familial obligation. He managed a portion of my investment portfolio, the one I had started with the inheritance from our grandmother. I made an appointment with a new independent firm, citing a desire to diversify my advisors and explore more aggressive growth strategies, a language my father would understand and respect. The transfer of assets was a clean, digital transaction. It was a significant sum, and its removal from his management would be noticeable, not just on his balance sheet, but in the trust it represented. I sent him a polite, professionally worded email informing him of the change, thanking him for his years of guidance. It was impersonal, final, and left no room for discussion. I knew it would wound his pride, but pride was a luxury I could no longer afford to protect for him. The second step was logistical. For years, I was the de facto manager of my parents' household affairs. I handled their online bill payments, troubleshooted their tech problems, and managed the maintenance schedules for their home. I had all their passwords and account details stored in a secure digital vault. Over the course of one evening, I went through every single account. I paid all their outstanding bills one final time. Then, I systematically changed all the passwords to simple, memorable phrases related to Jessica's wedding. Things like Jessica and Alex 2023, or perfect wedding day. I compiled all this new information into a single password, protected document, the password for the document itself, you're on your own. I then drafted an email to my parents and Jessica, with the document attached, explaining that due to my increasing workload, I could no longer manage these responsibilities for them. I scheduled the email to be sent on the morning of Jessica's wedding. The third and most significant step was emotional, and it involved my extended family. My mother was one of 4 siblings, and our family was large and interconnected. She was the self-appointed matriarch, the hub of all communication. She controlled the narrative. It was time to introduce a new one. I reached out to my Aunt Diana again, and together we planned a trip, a long one. I had accrued months of vacation time, and my current project had just wrapped. The timing was perfect. I put in for a 3-month leave of absence from my job, framing it as a creative sabbatical, to travel and find inspiration for my work. My boss, who valued my contributions, approved it without hesitation. I booked a one-way ticket to Lisbon, with a loose itinerary that would take me through Spain, Italy, and Croatia. I sold my car, arranged for a friend to sublet my apartment, and put my most treasured belongings into storage. I was untethering myself. In the weeks leading up to my departure, I did not respond to any calls or texts from my parents or Jessica. They grew increasingly agitated. First, it was confusion, then annoyance, then anger. "Simone, your sister needs to know if you're coming." My mother left in a frantic voicemail. "This is childish. Whatever is bothering you, you need to get over it and think about your family for once." The irony was breathtaking. My final act before leaving was to visit my grandmother's grave. She had been my true north, a woman who loved me unconditionally and saw my quiet nature not as a flaw, but as a strength. I sat by her headstone for a long time, telling her everything. I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I wasn't running away. I was finally, after 34 years, choosing myself. 2 weeks before the wedding, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Alexander, Jessica's fiancé, Simone. His voice was smooth, but with an undercurrent of irritation. "Listen, I don't know what's going on with you and your family, but Jessica is a wreck. This silent treatment is cruel. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Just RSVP no so we can move on. This drama is the last thing she needs right now." That was it. The final confirmation, to them, my pain was just drama. My silence was a tactic. They had no concept of the wound they had inflicted. They thought I was playing a game. They were about to find out I had already left the board. I deleted the voicemail. I blocked his number. I blocked my parents' numbers. I blocked Jessica's. The day before my flight, a courier delivered a small box to my apartment. It was from Jessica. Inside was a single, perfect pearl earring. Part of a set our grandmother had left for the two of us, to be worn on our wedding days. A note was attached. "I don't know why you're doing this," it read. "But I know you'd want me to have this. Grandma would have wanted us to be united." The audacity was staggering. She was invoking the memory of the one person who truly loved me to manipulate me into surrendering a piece of my inheritance, a piece of my history, for her perfect wedding photo op. I placed the earring back in its box. I would not be emotionally blackmailed. I packed the box in my suitcase. My grandmother's pearls would be coming with me. They would see the world, far away from the toxic sentimentality of a family that didn't deserve to invoke her name. My retreat was now complete. The silence was absolute. I landed in Lisbon as the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The air smelled of sea salt and coffee. As I navigated the cobblestone streets, pulling my suitcase behind me, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. It was the feeling of being utterly, completely anonymous. No one here knew me as Jessica's sister or Mark and Helen's daughter. I was just Simone, a woman with a backpack and a sketchbook, ready to see the world. My phone, now fitted with a European SIM card, remained silent. I had left my old number behind, a digital ghost. My only connection to home was an email address I shared with Aunt Diana. She had promised to be my conduit, to let me know if there were any real emergencies, but otherwise to let me be. Back home, it was the week of the wedding. As I was exploring ancient castles and sketching in sunny plazas, the carefully constructed world of my family was beginning to fray at the edges. The first ripple, as Diana later told me, was financial. My father noticed the transfer of my portfolio. He called me repeatedly, but the calls never went through. He emailed, his tone shifting from professional curiosity to paternal outrage. "Simone, this is a significant financial decision that you have made without consulting me. This is unwise and disrespectful. Call me immediately." When I didn't respond, his panic grew. He had lost control, not just over a large sum of money, but over me. The second ripple was logistical. The week of the wedding was when the plates they had been keeping spinning started to wobble. The caterer called my mother to confirm the final guest count and a special meal request she thought I had handled. The venue coordinator emailed about a schedule change that had gone unanswered. The Wi-Fi went out, and no one knew the password to the router, let alone how to reset it. These were small things, the invisible labor I had performed for years. But without me, these small things snowballed into a mountain of stress. My mother's frantic texts to me went into the void. "Simone, I need the password for the streaming service. Jessica wants to watch her show. Where are you? This isn't funny anymore." The biggest ripple, however, came from the family. Relatives started calling my parents, asking if I was okay. They hadn't heard from me. Was I coming to the wedding? My cousins, with whom I was close, knew something was wrong. My complete radio silence was uncharacteristic. The narrative my parents tried to spin, that I was being difficult and jealous, began to fall apart. It was Aunt Diana who skillfully dismantled it. When relatives called her for the inside scoop, she played her part with masterful subtlety. "Oh, I'm not sure," she would say with a sigh. "I know Simone has been under a lot of pressure at work, and she was so hurt after that last family dinner. She felt like she wasn't wanted at the wedding. It's so sad. She loves Jessica so much." She planted seeds of doubt, using the truth as her weapon. She never lied, but she framed the story in a way that made my parents and Jessica the clear antagonists. The idea that they would make me feel unwelcome at my own sister's wedding was shocking to the family. It didn't fit with the perfect, happy image my mother had curated for decades. The day before the wedding, Jessica had a full-blown meltdown. The photographer needed a childhood photo of the two of us, and my mother couldn't find the digital albums I had so meticulously organized and backed up. The DJ asked for a list of songs that were special to our family, and no one could remember the name of the song our grandmother used to sing to us. My absence was no longer a matter of an empty chair at a table. It was a black hole, sucking in all the light and joy and leaving behind a cold, awkward void. I was the keeper of their history, the family archivist, and without me, they were adrift. Alexander, seeing his perfect bride in tears and his perfect wedding unraveling, became furious. He called my father, demanding that he handle me. My father, powerless and humiliated, had to admit he had no idea where I was. The carefully planned $1 million event was now shrouded in a fog of questions and whispers. Where was Simone? Why wasn't she there? What had happened? The distraction they had so desperately wanted to avoid had become the main topic of conversation. My physical absence was infinitely more conspicuous than my single presence ever could have been. Sitting at a cafe overlooking the Tagus River, I sketched the pattern of the tiles on the building across from me. I was thousands of miles away, breathing free air. I had no idea of the chaos I had unleashed. I had simply withdrawn my energy, my time, my support, and without it, their entire structure was beginning to collapse. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and sunny. In Portugal, I woke up early, went for a run along the coast, and then settled into a bakery for breakfast. For me, it was just a Saturday. For my family, it was the day the bill for their cruelty came due. At 8:00 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, my scheduled email was delivered to the inboxes of my parents and my sister. The subject line was simple: important information. The body of the email was brief and professional. Dear family, effective immediately, I will no longer be managing your personal, financial, and household affairs. Due to a significant increase in my own professional and personal commitments, I am unable to provide this support any longer. Attached is a document containing all relevant account information, usernames, and newly updated passwords for your various utilities, services, and financial accounts. The password to open the document is, "You're on your own, I wish you all the best. Sincerely, Simone." As Jessica was getting her hair and makeup done, my father saw the email. He tried the password, "You're on your own." The message was unmistakable. It was a declaration of independence delivered with cold, corporate efficiency. Inside the document, he found the list of passwords, all themed around the wedding he was about to attend. Perfect wedding day, Jessica and Alex 2023, happily ever after. Each one was a tiny digital slap in the face. The reckoning continued at the venue. Guests arrived, dressed in their finest, and immediately noticed the palpable tension. The groom was sullen, the bride looked strained, and the parents of the bride were forcing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. And then there were the questions. Where's Simone? Is she not here yet? My mother's cousin asked. Oh, she had a last-minute work emergency, a trip to Asia. You know how dedicated she is. My mother lied, her voice a little too high-pitched. But the lie didn't hold. Aunt Diana, dressed in an elegant navy blue dress, was a quiet center of truth. When people asked her, she would look sad and shake her head. It's such a shame, she'd say, just loud enough to be overheard. Simone wanted to be here so badly, but she felt she would be an imposition. It broke her heart to stay away. The whispers grew louder. The family, who had known me my whole life, knew I wouldn't miss my sister's wedding for a work emergency. They knew my dedication to family was absolute. This wasn't like me. Something was very wrong. The ceremony itself was beautiful, a triumph of aesthetics over emotion. Jessica looked stunning, but as she walked down the aisle, her eyes scanned the crowd, and for a fleeting moment, a look of genuine loss crossed her face. The one person who had been her constant, her shadow, her unconditional support system, was gone. The victory felt hollow. At the reception, my father was tasked with giving the father of the bride's speech. He stood up, champagne flute in hand, and began with the usual platitudes. I am the proudest father in the world today. He started, his voice booming. Looking at my beautiful daughter Jessica, about to start her new life with this wonderful young man, Alexander. I have 2 wonderful daughters, and while my eldest, Simone, couldn't be here today due to an unavoidable work commitment on the other side of the world, I know she is here in spirit. As he said my name, a few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Diana took a delicate sip of her water, her expression unreadable, but the real reckoning came later after the speeches and the dinner, when the bills for this extravagant affair started to quietly accumulate. The wedding planner approached my father with a question about an outstanding payment to the florist. My father, flustered, told her his wife handled it. My mother, cornered, admitted she thought I had set up an automatic transfer. The payment had been missed. It was a small, embarrassing moment, but it was a sign of things to come. Jessica, trying to post a perfectly curated photo to her social media, found the venue's Wi-Fi to be spotty. She had no idea how to troubleshoot it. The little technical fires I had always seamlessly extinguished were now burning unchecked. The day they had wanted to be perfect and free of distractions was anything but. My absence was a ghost at the feast, a topic of hushed speculation in every corner of the room. They had wanted to erase me from their perfect picture, but instead, they had created a silhouette in the center of it that was impossible to ignore. They had gotten what they wanted. I was not there, and it had ruined everything. I spent 3 months traveling through Europe. I filled sketchbooks with drawings of Gothic cathedrals, Portuguese tiles, and the faces of strangers in crowded markets. I learned to cook pasta in a small village in Tuscany. I hiked the dramatic coastline of Croatia. For the first time in my life, I was completely and utterly on my own schedule. I was not solving anyone's problems, managing anyone's emotions, or shrinking myself to fit into a pre-assigned role. I was expanding. I kept in touch with Aunt Diana. She gave me periodic updates, not to gloat, but to keep me informed. The aftermath of the wedding was, in her words, a slow-motion train wreck. My parents struggled to reclaim control over their digital lives. They were forced to call customer service lines, wait on hold for hours, and learn the basics of tasks I had been doing for them for 15 years. It was a humbling and infuriating experience for them. Jessica's new life as Mrs. Alexander Sterling wasn't the fairy tale she had advertised. The cracks in their perfect relationship began to show. Alexander was controlling, and he had little patience for her manufactured online persona. The reality of marriage was far more complex than a curated Instagram feed. Without me as her emotional sounding board, Jessica felt isolated. She tried to call me a few times from new numbers, leaving tearful, rambling voicemails that I listened to once and then deleted. They were all about her. How could you do this to me? I needed you. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what they had done. When I returned home, I was different. The trip had changed me in profound ways. I was calmer, more confident, and had a newfound clarity about what I wanted from my life. I moved into a new apartment in a different part of the city. I poured my travel experiences into my work, and my designs took on a new vitality. I was promoted to head of my department. About 6 months after the wedding, I received a letter in the mail, forwarded from my old address. It was from my mother. It was handwritten, and the cursive was shaky. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was a letter of lament. She wrote about how difficult things had been, how much they had always relied on me, and how they hadn't realized the extent of it until I was gone. She wrote that Jessica was unhappy. The final sentence was the closest she came to taking responsibility. I suppose we never appreciated what we had. The house is too quiet without you. I read the letter, folded it, and put it away. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. The trust that had been shattered could not be repaired with a few nostalgic sentences. A year to the day after the family dinner where I was disowned, I was sitting in a park, reading a book, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. That was it. Just 2 words. I knew it was from Jessica. For a long moment, I considered not responding. I thought about the years of being taken for granted, the casual cruelty, the profound humiliation. But I also thought about the little girl who used to follow me around the house, the sister I had once loved without reservation. I typed back a reply, I know. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a welcome back into their lives. It was an acknowledgement that the damage was done, and that we were now 2 separate people on 2 separate paths. My disappearance had been the end of our story as a family unit, but it was the beginning of my story as a whole person. They had told me it was better I not be there, so I had built a life where I was happy not to be, and in that I had found my own perfect, happy ending.